Hello and welcome to episode 578 of Monster Kid Radio, the podcast devoted to the classic and sometimes not so classic genre cinema of yesteryear. I'm your writer, host, producer, Derek M. Cook. Welcome to this week's episode. Now, this past weekend was Monster Bash Summer 2022. I did not go, but a lot of y'all did, including Kenny from All Mexico. Kenny took some time to recap and review his Monster Bash experience this week, and that's what we're doing this week on the show. You're going to hear me talk with Kenny about all the fun stuff he did at Monster Bash, and view it as kind of like a preview, because I do have some audio coming from other listeners from the Bash that we're going to be playing over the next, few weeks, I suppose. It depends on how much content I get, but I know I have at least one bit of audio that we're going to be playing next week here on the show. So this is part one of our Monster Bash coverage, even though I wasn't there. What music are we playing this week? Well, this is a song by Chris Yeaworth and the Molten McQueens. Why are we playing this week? Well, I know it's not surf music. However, Chris Yeaworth is somebody who was at the most recent Monster Bash, and you know what? You're going to learn more about why I decided to play this song during the conversation with Kenny. We've played this on the show once before, back when we covered The Blob, but, it just felt like it was time to play the song again. You will hear the song in its entirety with lyrics at the end of this episode, so stay tuned for that. Mark Matsky's also here this week, because it wouldn't be a week of Monster Kid Radio without some Ultra action. And I'm not going to say it, it's Ultra 7. 7, I can't help myself! I love Ultra 7. So that's coming up on this episode of Monster Kid Radio as well. Also, turns out the Monsters in the Machine have dropped the ball doing their job. The voicemail line for Monster Kid Radio, it's kaput! It's gone! It got deleted. Actually, I think what happened was just due to inactivity. It got deleted by Google, and Google never let me know, or let the Monsters in the Machine know. I'm still going to blame them. So we now have a brand new voicemail number. I will try to update the website, but it will be in this week's show notes. Area code 360-524-2484. 360-524-2484. I wanted to get something kind of clever, how to spell something out, but doesn't look like Google lets you do that anymore, or at least I couldn't figure it out. So that's the new number for Monster Kid Radio. If you have any feedback for this episode, or anything else about Monster Kid Radio, or just monster movies in general, heck, maybe you went to Monster Bash and you want to call in your own thoughts about the event, that's how you would do it. Of course, you can also email me at monsterkidradio@gmail.com. Let's go ahead and get into the rest of this show. We get to Mark Matsky's Beta Capsule review, the conversation with Kenny. Let's go.
Alive after 70 million years. Dinosaurs! Roaring, walking, destroying. Dinosaurus! The most amazing adventure since the beginning of time. Dinosaurus! For these people, there could only be shock and dismay. For who among them could believe that out of the primordial slime had come these creatures? The huge Brontosaurus, the ferocious Tyrannosaurus, even a primitive caveman. Panic-stricken, horrified, did they have the courage, the ingenuity to survive?
How do we get word out, Hacker? Mailboat will be in tomorrow morning. By tomorrow, we could all be dead.
We are going to be friends, you and me.
Sights never before seen on the screen. A 60-ton dinosaur tamed by a small boy and a caveman. A caveman loose in a modern home. The death duel of the dinosaurs. A girl caught by the dread Tyrannosaurus. The battle between giant monster and monster machine. The moat of fire.
holding him. Yeah, but for how long?
It's all new. The creature walks among us, more terrifying in human form. Striking at the heart of the city with inhuman fury. The creature walks among us. Horror unleashed by the daring of man and a dangerous experiment of science.
I have burned away the outer scale. There's a structure of human skin underneath it.
The creature walks among us. The grimmest cargo ever brought to civilization. Now a monster made even more frightful by human emotions. Plus Merle Oberon, Lex Barker in The Price of Fear. Two great thrill pictures on one program.
Nothing can stop it.
The Blob.
Starring Steve McQueen.
It creeps.
It crawls.
It's slithery.
It's slimy.
The Blob.
Plus Dinosaurus, both in shrieking color.
Live from the Land of Light in Nebula M78, home of the mighty Ultra Heroes, it's Monster Kid Radio's Beta Capsule Review. A fortune teller with genuine psychic powers is on the run from alien assassins at the beginning of Ultra 7 Episode 23, Search for Tomorrow. Pursued and nearly run down by Truck, Yasui, the unfortunate fortune teller, is rescued by the Ultra Guard and given shelter at TDF headquarters. There, he demonstrates his abilities using a crystal ball and foresees the explosion of Warehouse 3, an important TDF munitions facility, along with the landing of a flying saucer in the countryside. Captain Kiriyama, while sympathetic toward Yasui and respectful of his abilities, declines his request to stay at TDF, a decision that will come back to haunt him when the psychic is finally abducted. The shadow aliens subject Yasui to torturous experiments to learn the extent of his powers, concluding that he poses a legitimate threat, since he can anticipate every step of their invasion plan. Meanwhile, feeling personally responsible for Yasui's kidnapping, Captain Kiriyama asks for and is granted a one-day leave to conduct his own investigation into the fortune teller's disappearance. When Dan intervenes in his search, the Ultra Guard tracks down the alien shadow flying saucer using new technology, and after a gun battle with the invaders, Dan transforms into Ultra 7. This appears to force the release of Yasui, but Alien Shadow has a wicked surprise in store that even the Eye Slugger can't stop. Search for Tomorrow leans into the gritty, avant-garde aesthetic pioneered by director Akio Jisuji, using creative camera angles to interest the viewer. The episode is overseen by Samaji no Nagase, who doesn't push the visuals as far as Jisuji, but nevertheless crafts some memorable sequences. Among them, the opening chase scene in which Yasui looks incredibly close to the grille of that truck, the shadow torture chamber, which anticipates alien abduction lore, and the closing battle that takes a rather heady turn. The true strength of Episode 23, however, is the time it devotes to the ever-honorable Captain Kiriyama, as portrayed by Shoji Nakayama. Nakayama gives the character a well-rounded and mature presence, at turns forceful, decisive, protective, and humorous, and always bound by duty. His open-mindedness towards Yasui's extrasensory abilities adds another layer to an already robust persona, whose leadership can even inspire an Ultra Brother. For Monster Kid Radio's Beta Capsule Review, this is Mark Matsky reporting.
Outer Space is a picture that you'll long remember for its blending of science and fiction, for its eerie terror, and for its story of an invasion from another planet that's almost beyond imagining. I tell you, from its size and its appearance, this thing came from outer space. I even have reason to believe that there's some form of life in it. What do you want? What are you doing? Let me see you as you really are.
The House of Wax, the ultimate dimension in terror, comes to the screen in Stereovision 3D. Vincent Price, at his diabolical best, will take you room by terrible room on a journey to the ultimate chamber of horrors. Stereovision 3D will synthesize before your eyes the terrifying reality of it all. In Stereovision 3D, House of Wax is more than a movie. It's an experience you'll never forget.
You know, listeners, I don't know if he's going to be doing a segment this week or not because he's actually going to be on the show. I'm talking about Kenny from Old Mexico. How's it going, Kenny?
Doing pretty good. Just got back from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, my ex-hometown.
Oh, so jealous. So jealous. I've been watching Facebook all weekend, and so many of my friends were at Monster Bash, having a good time. I didn't see anybody post any pictures where it didn't look like I'd be smiling along with them. Just everybody looked like they were having a blast. Even if it was a little different hotel, smaller venue. I heard some things were a little different than normal, but, you know, it still looked like a good time. And you, sir, a couple of pictures of you even popped up.
Yep.
It looks like you were having fun, man.
It was a good time. It was different. Every bash is different from the last one, and the first one's always seemed the most special. But this one had its moments, and I did have a good time. I enjoyed it. The one interesting thing about the hotel, it's a bigger as far as it has more rooms than the other hotels they have, apparently, because we did not fill it up. So there was a lot of like normal people. So we're all the Monster Bashers we're doing our thing. You walk in the lobby, there's the Monster Bash, there's a big Frankenstein model right there, you know, and we're all wearing our shirts and we're all dressed up, you know, and there's all these normal people looking at us.
Sure.
So we felt like the nerds back in high school again, you know.
Oh no.
And there was a team, like a sports team there of young boys, you know, and I walked in, and they were in the gym in the fitness area, and I was like, I'm going to see what they have. Maybe I'll do something in the mornings. And I walk in there, and all these young guys are like, oh, look, it's the Monster Bash. And I was like, what am I? I'm back in high school again.
Oh,
so I went running, screaming, but it was fun. We had a good time. And then there was people that were like very, you know, interested in us, and you know, and asking us questions, and you know, making good comments. So it was interesting, because that's like really the first bash where I felt like we are not alone here.
You know, that's true. So I've been to Monster Bash a handful of times now, and every time I go, we've taken over the hotel. Mm-hmm. You know, the beginning and the end of the event, there's a few stragglers, but for the most part, we've taken it over. And you're not the first person that I've heard say that it was not a complete bash takeover. So that's interesting. I wonder what kind of stories the non-bashers like.
Well, yeah. At one point, and I think it was like Saturday night, like an entire wedding came in, and one of the elevators broke. So it was interesting to see all these people dressed to the nines, and all of us dressed like monster kids, you know.
Oh, man.
Intermingling with everybody. So it was something else. But
wow.
it made it different and interesting, to say the least.
Yeah, sounds like it. Sounds like it. Did you go for the entire event, all 3 days?
Yes, I did. In fact, I got there Thursday evening and checked out a little bit of the movies that they show at the beginning. And a lot of people were here early, and there's a lot of people sitting around talking. And so I came in and chatted a little bit and watched a little bit of the movies and went up and got ready for the big day to start, the first full day on Friday.
So they did show movies. That's good to know. Yeah, so for listeners who don't know, the way Monster Bash is usually set up, there's like a pre-show movie room, and I think maybe, at least in the previous events that I've been to, previous batches I've been to, there might be a room set up with some vendor stuff, but it's strictly like Monster Bash, Creepy Classic specific stuff, as everybody else is loading in and all that. Enough to kind of keep you entertained until the real show starts the following day. So that's cool to know that they're at least still showing films.
Yeah, that was one thing I did right the first off is, Creepy Classics had it set up, and then some of the Monster Bashers, like Monster Bash staff, they bring like their secondhand items. So they have almost like a little garage sale around the Creepy Classics room. And it was interesting in this particular hotel, the Creepy Classics section was larger than it has been in the past. It was much more roomy.
Oh, really?
And then they had a lot of guys, and I found some nice things. I bought a Valley of Gwangi comic book, from 1969 for $3. It wasn't, mint quality, but it was it was good enough to look through it, have fun with that. I bought the Flash series from the 1990 Flash series for $5. So I found a couple good deals there. And then then one of the things I was looking for and I found and I bought right off was a complete thriller series, Boris Karloff thriller. I've seen a handful of episodes. He played some on the Twitch stream, and but never had really had the opportunity to see them all. So I was like, I want to see this. And the last couple of bashes, I haven't been able to find it, but they had it. And I was like, I'm going to get this before someone else gets it. So I picked that up, and the Santo movies, Blu-rays that came out. So
oh, good.
So I did some shopping right off the bat.
Oh, right on.
It was easy to do. They were kind of impulse buys, but that was fun to do that before it gets too crowded.
Movies Thursday night, and then Friday you were off and running.
Yeah, so I have it set up here. I'm going to go through this kind of chronologically and just give you some highlights that I attended. So first off and this is pretty traditional, they show a movie, an old documentary from the 60s about monster movies. And then after that, their first guest that they have is Courtland Hull, who is the great nephew of Henry Hull, and Bill Diamond, who's a puppeteer, and they produce documentaries. And Courtland Hull runs a museum in Connecticut. So they always do a presentation, and they showed some documentaries. He had an interesting little documentary on Christopher Lee, and it was an interesting presentation. Bill Diamond brings out this puppet called Gorgo, and he tells some jokes, and so that was fun. And it's one of those things, every time I see it, it's like, oh, I got to get up to Connecticut. I have to get up to Connecticut to see this museum, and they're making it better and better, bigger and bigger. So it was an interesting presentation that they had. The next event that I went to, they showed Dinosaurus, and after that, they had the son of the writer-producer of that, who is Chris Yeworth.
Oh, I'm so glad he was there. I know he's been having some health issues. That's great.
Yes, and it was kind of sad because he was basically saying this is his swan song, and he was very talkative and did his normal thing, talking about his dad and the Blob, and he gave a good presentation. He was sitting in a wheelchair, but he basically told us, he's in the 4th stage of pancreatic cancer. So, and he was a lot thinner than I remember him the last time I saw him at the bash. So, but it was neat to see him. His presentation was very interesting. He's a good storyteller, and so I enjoyed that. And he was telling stories about Steve McQueen and different stars that he worked with. And he was like a session musician, and even had times with Elvis and stuff like that. So very interesting talk.
Nice.
And it was enjoyable. But it was also kind of bittersweet, thinking, this might be the last time that we'll see him. So after that was The Golden Voyage of Sinbad. Being a Harryhausen fan.
So you must have loved that.
I could not be seen leaving during that, so I had to watch that. Well, I had to suffer through that again.
Oh, darn.
The problem I have watching that with an audience is when the Callie scene comes up, what I love to do is I love to get up and I pretend to be Callie, I pretend to be Sinbad, and I pretend to be Milkless Rosa all at the same time. So I'm conducting music, I'm fighting like a six-armed statue, and I'm fighting like Sinbad, and I'm dancing around with that music. And that scene, to me, is one of I struggle not to say that's my all-time favorite Harryhausen sequence.
Wow.
The fight with the skeleton fight, fantastic, and I love the music in that too. I love every part of that. But the Callie fight and the music for that, I think that musical cut from that is like my favorite musical cut of any Harryhausen film. And Miklos Rosa is an interesting music person, but I've seen he did noir movies in the 50s, epics and all that, but you can always tell that's Miklos Rosa because he uses kind of the same themes over and over. He did not have the variety that Bernard Herrmann did in changing the orchestration and stuff like that. But that one cut from that Callie scene is just something else, and I want to be singing it and humming it, and it's like there are people around me, they're not going to want me, hear me, dun dun, doing the whole thing, because it is so it's so cool. But it was enjoyable to watch it. It was probably my 10th, between 10th and 15th time watching it, and I come from the day when it was like, if it would come on TV, it was like you turn your life around, and you were going to be there for that. Mm-hmm. And then now I own it and it sits on my shelf gathering dust, but it was fun to watch it with a crowd. And of course they put that on right before the next big event, which was Caroline Munro. And so she had her panel, and sweet as ever, and just had a nice talk. The standard questions. How was like working with Christopher Lee? How was like working with Peter Cushing? And she was just so kind, as she always is, and just so lovely, and then very, very appreciative of us as fans. And one of the cool things about this bash, and I'll talk more about her later, is that she just got involved. She says she loves coming to Monster Bash, that it is her favorite. And you get that sense because all during the show, she was getting involved in the different things that were happening. And I'll talk more about that as we get into those events. But it was wonderful to see her again. I was the first time that I saw her was her first convention that she went to, which was in Pittsburgh, 1979. So wow. She was 30 and I was 15. And so this time I went and I got a picture with her, and she's very generous. Like, most of the people that were there, one guy was charging $40, the other group was charging $50 for a photo op. She only charges $10 for a photo op, which is like, wow. So again, that's a sign that she's there for the money. She's there because she wants to be there, to me. Mm-hmm. She could easily charge more and people would pay, but she only charged 10. So I got a picture with her, and I told her that story of my first time. So my first time that I met her, we were in the hotel lobby, my dad and I, and she walked in, and my dad was like, "Whoa, wow, she is something else." And I was like, "Yeah." And a 15-year-old, how the hormones are going, And I go, and so I get in line when she starts her photo ops. And I get in line, and I get up to her, and I'm going to get my picture. And she puts her arm around me, but she just doesn't, just like a little light touch. She pulls me into her. Oh. And I told her, I said, at that moment, you made this 15-year-old boy fall in love with you, And I left that convention with a stack of photos, and I had a wall of Caroline Munro.
Oh, man.
until I was in the college. But yeah, and it was just, she's just a sweetheart, and she had a good panel talk, and it was fun seeing her again.
Oh wow!
So what was next? I skipped a couple things. So the next thing that I went to was the Mummy's Tomb. So it'd been a while since I'd seen the Universal Mummy movie. So I watched that one, and it was interesting. The person who, I think it was Ron, who it presented, is like, people say, why some people say Mummy's Tomb is their favorite, but there's so many flashbacks. There's flashbacks from the mummy, and there's flashbacks from the mummy's hand, and then it has its own stuff. And then he said, well, the thing is, you're getting 3 mummy movies in one: the best of the mummy, the best of the mummy's hand, and the new stuff. So yeah, and it's a short, quick movie, and it was fun. And then after that, and one of my favorite things, one of the things that really makes going to the bash worthwhile since my first bash, is the talks with the authors. And the first one was with Frank Dello Stritto. And I love Frank Dello Stritto.
Oh, he's great.
Fact,
yeah.
In fact, I was trying to inspire people to vote for him to get into the Hall of Fame. The other author that comes, Greg Mank, he was there too, and he's in the Hall of Fame, the Rondo Awards Hall of Fame, but Frank isn't. And I was like, why is this? So I kind of got on a soapbox and actually talked to him a little bit. I saw him around and I was telling him I was the guy, because he was like thanking me for doing that on Facebook. And so I had a little talk with him about that. But his presentation was on the Mummy movies. And,
okay.
You would have loved this, Derek. It was fantastic. He went through all the Mummy movies. He was comparing them, talking about the history of them, and then comparing how they were. And that includes the Universal, the Hammer ones, and he threw in the Pharaoh's Curse too. Oh. So, and he just had, interesting stories, a really well done PowerPoint. And it was also kind of like a plug for his newest book, which is a fiction book. But what he does is he synthesizes all of the Mummy movies, all of the Mummy stories, and makes one story around them, if I understood him. And I'm going to be honest, I'm not a super Mummy fan. The foot dragging, it's easy to run away from monster. Never thrilled me like a Wolfman did. But he made it interesting. He just did a really good job at sharing, and one of the interesting things, like the writer of The Mummy was the same guy who wrote Dracula, and he just went through all the ways that they're exactly the same. Yeah. Like, it was basically the same story.
Even the same music, even Swan Lake to open the thing. Yeah.
And that was one of his points too. So, and it was well presented with a great PowerPoint. And, that was really one of the highlights for me. And it always is Frank's talks. His attention to detail. If you think you're a monster kid into the details, when you meet Frank Dello Stritto, you realize I'm not quite that much of a monster kid.
Oh no!
but it's fascinating. He doesn't make it seem like, oh, what a nerd. He's like, this guy is so cool. I want to be like Frank. So that was the next thing. Then after that was another one of the things that I really like and enjoy. It doesn't seem overly monsterly, but it's just they're trying to capture the time, just like with you and your surf music on the Monster Kid Radio. They always have the band, the Bash Band.
Yep.
And I always enjoy them. They had some of their standards like Werewolves of London, but with a catch. This year, they all wore Wolfman masks. So they were like these little cheesy masks. It was funny. And Kevin Slick, a faithful Monster Kid Radiohead, he was complaining how all the hair was going in his mouth. It's hard to sing with this thing on. but they and they had some new songs. They had a couple songs from the 80s, which I appreciated. I love the oldies. I'm a 50s, 60s guy. I love that stuff. I kind of skipped the 70s when I was young, but when I got into the 80s, I became an 80s music fan, and they played a song by the Cars. I was surprised, but that was fun.
Oh, wow.
So that was good. Now, this is my first Caroline Munro getting involved. she had mentioned during her panel talk that she did albums. Someone asked her, well, yeah, I heard that you did some records, or some singles.
Sure.
And she shared about that, and she was kind of embarrassed, and it wasn't that good and all that. But in the middle of that, she said she would be willing to sing. So they brought her up, and she did a duet with Mark Sattler, who's a singer who does the Monster Bash song.
Oh.
But he came up and she did a song, Blue Moon, but like a slow version of Blue Moon. And it was a duet, and it was very nice to see her up there on the stage singing. So
that's awesome.
That was the Bash Band. The next after that was the Mexican Monster Night, the Mexican movie night.
Oh, I know you were there for that.
Yeah. It was a Nostradamus movie called, in English, The Genie of Darkness. I was kind of getting to the end. By that time, it was getting pretty late, because they always end up being late.
Yeah.
It was kind of a bittersweet thing too, because it was the first bash that I've been to that Bob Cotter wasn't there, who was always the person who introduced it. A guy from Pittsburgh, a super Pittsburgh guy, never been to Mexico, but loves Mexican movies and knows more about them than I ever will. Knew more about them than ever will. Yeah. He passed away not too long ago, maybe a year or so ago. But they had a new guy, Tom Shabula, who is a Monster Bash staff member, a younger guy, and he did a really good job. And I talked with him, and I said, maybe I'm going to resurrect Santa Tito, little character thing I do.
Yeah.
I haven't done that for a while, but I thought, I think I might resurrect that if I get a chance to go again. So, but that was the end of my Friday. I didn't make it to the movie. I was nodding off. I did have an interesting talk with a guy next to me. He came in, the gentleman he had a stack of Famous Monsters magazines. Well, that makes it easy. And so I was telling him a little bit about what I do for Monster Kid Radio and what issues I had and what issues because he was like filling out his collection.
Nice.
And, so I had a little good talk with that guy. Okay, so the next day, we're going to move on to Saturday. I skipped the cartoons, but went in to see a TV show they were showing that the idea fascinated me. It was a Thunderbird show. And the episode...
Oh, okay.
The episode was called Attack of the Alligators. And it didn't really fit in with any theme or any guest, but someone had mentioned it to Ron, and Ron saw it, Ron Adams, the director of Monster Bash, and said, this is so cool. And it was. It was, there's the Thunderbird puppets, and there was these alligators, and they used real alligators. And just to think how complicated it is, they had a swamp set in this big mansion, and the alligators were destroying the mansion, and the puppets are inside, and everything's falling. And it was just, it's like to think how difficult. And I felt the same way I do when I watch a kaiju movie. These all look like toys, but boy, are they ever cool toys! And it was really a lot of fun to see these alligators, live alligators that they were using, and how they were able to edit them in and have them interact with these puppets. And it was pretty good. So if you like the Jerry Anderson puppet shows, look that one up, Attack of the Alligators Thunderbirds episode. And another thing I got a kick out of, the first Thunderbird that they mentioned is named Scott Tracy. And that, of course, reminded me of our good friend Scott.
Who were there?
Yeah, they were there. And I told them, I said, well, I was watching the Thunderbirds, and that first guy they mentioned is Scott Tracy. And it made me think of you guys. So the next thing up on the schedule was an episode of The Land of the Lost. Okay, when that thing came out, I was a youngster, probably 8 or 9 years old. Super dinosaur fan. And that was like the most exciting thing to have on a Saturday morning. Had stop motion animated dinosaurs.
Oh, I thought, I was right there with you, man. Yeah.
And it was fun watching an episode again. That they're kind of hard to swallow for me these days, but it was fun. It was a good episode that they chose. to run. And the reason they showed that is that the next panel, the first guests for Saturday, were Kathy Coleman and Wesley who are Marshall, Will, and Holly. I have to go through the song not to mix up Marshall and Will. So Will and Holly from the show, and another just wonderful couple. They're not a couple. They're not a married couple. They're just friends, but they were really good at presenting their panel, telling funny stories. They led us. We all sang the Land of Lost theme, and they were funny and informative, and it was a really enjoyable panel. Now, I remember I've been to the Star Trek Las Vegas convention a couple times, and they're always there. They don't do a panel, and the reason they're there is that some of the writers of Land of the Lost, especially David Gerrold, who was the writer of Trouble with Tribbles, there's like a Star Trek connection there. But I always would walk by them, and they'd be like begging people to come to their table, and please, talk to us, And I'm always apprehensive. It's like, I'm not going to pay you any money for anything. I like Land of the Lost, but I don't want to spend my money on Land of the Lost. So I feel nervous about talking with people when I'm not gonna say, oh, I'll buy this from you. So I'd always be like, but here at Monster Bash, they were loved, and they had people at their table, and they had a raft set up, and their photo op was getting into the raft, and then everyone would shout, "Ah!" just like in the theme. So during the whole Monster Bash, and their thing was set up right next to the door for the movie event room, but all during the Monster Bash, you're hearing ah, because they were doing photo ops, and I think they were truly honest when they looked across the panel, and it's 10:30 in the morning, and the crowd was pretty packed. It was pretty filled up. And they were like, this is the biggest panel discussion we've ever done.
Oh.
And it was really nice. And the crowd was excited. They had good questions, and they were very, very nice people.
That's good.
And it was a nice panel. And I think it was their first time, and I won't be surprised if they come back, because they seem to be quite popular. And then the next thing that I went to Saturday afternoons was Zach Ito, who is Zach Zito.
Okay.
Normally they would do his thing late at night, like after the Saturday drive-in movie. And I'm glad they tried to do it. They did it in the afternoon, because I'm usually like trying not to fall asleep during his event, but he's just amazing. Now he's showing his age a little bit, because I think he's struggling to memorize everything, because he memorizes an hour worth of Bram Stoker and Edgar Allan Poe.
Yeah.
But he was doing some reading, but of course it was interesting. And again, for the second time, Caroline Munro came up and got involved. She read a part, she acted. And so we've seen her sing, and now we saw her act with Zach Zito. And he did a thing from Dracula's Guest by Bram Stoker.
Oh, nice.
And a couple of Edgar Allan Poe poems. And so he's also just a kind, nice gentleman, and it was a lot of fun seeing him again. Next up, again, one of my favorite things, my highlights, the authors' talks. And so the next up was Greg Mank. And he had a presentation about The Mummy, the 1932 Mummy, then two other movies from 1932, Rasputin and the Empress, and The Mask of Fu Manchu. Now, I don't know if in your Rally Awards for 1932 that you included Rasputin and the Empress, but he was making the presentation that was actually like a horror film.
Okay.
It's like, in fact, in the guide it says more of a horror film than many people realize, and in fact, one of the most horrific of 1932. I don't know if you guys included it in the Rally Awards.
No, I'm not familiar with it at all.
And I've seen a film, and it's well done, and Rasputin is pretty crazy. He's played by Lionel Barrymore, And John Barrymore's in the movie, and Ethel Barrymore. So it was the only movie with all three of the famous Barrymore family.
Are you sure it wasn't Lionel Atwill?
Yeah, it was Lionel Atwill and John Zuko.
Why do I always mix them up? All right.
His talk was not quite as well organized as Frank Dillastreto. To be honest, in the battle of the presenting authors, for me, Frank Dillastreto won it out this year. But it was interesting. He gave a lot of little stories about the different movies, little anecdotes, and then talking about the Mask of Fu Manchu and the Mummy. He kind of went. He didn't talk too much about the Mummy because Frank had already done it. So I don't know if they didn't coordinate or what, but it was still a good talk. And the reason he was talking about is that his movies were their 90th anniversary.
Sure.
So he was just talking about their place in the history of cinema and all that. So it was interesting. It was good. But I think Frank won this year. My opinion. That's just my opinion. All right. So the next thing that came up at 6 p.m., I was there for a episode of One Step Beyond.
Nice.
I know that the Twitch, we see those frequently on the Twitch stream, but this episode was The Premonition, which featured our next star, Beverly Washburn.
She's great. That's awesome.
Yeah. And Beverly Washburn was in this episode, and she was like in half the movie, and then it switched to an older version, but she was a young girl, and very interesting performance, and showed her ability to cry on cue, which is her claim to fame. And then the Q&A with her, again, just a wonderful lady. And it was just a really nice time hearing her stories. And sometimes I get frustrated with the questions that are asked, because it's always, what was it like working with this person? What was it like working with that person? Instead of, what did you feel? What did you, I always try to ask a question to get them to talk about themselves or something, some aspect. In fact, I asked her, what her parents, what her family thought of Spider Baby when it finally came out. It was delayed release. And they were like, oh, they were always supportive, and my mother didn't care. So
okay.
I thought that movie is so strange.
Yeah.
For that time. So it was a really nice chat, and she just, what it did is it's like, oh, I want to buy her book because I want to read her story.
Yeah.
And she did a good job at making us feel good. And I want to buy her book. And then she said, well, I sold out all my books. Oh
no.
To buy her book. So I'll have to go and find it somewhere. All right. So, and of course, she was in so many things and had so many stories, so many people that she worked with, that it was really a good panel discussion with Beverly. Then the next thing up, again, being a Harryhausen fan, the fact they showed this, I had to be there. It could not be seen walking out of the next film, Sinbad and the Eye of the Tiger. And that featured our next panel, our next guest, Patrick Wayne.
Yeah.
Now, Sinbad the Eye of the Tiger, not one of my favorite Harryhausen films, but I have ways of rating Harryhausen films. And what I call Sinbad the Eye of the Tiger and his last film, Clash of Titans, they're great Harryhausen films, but they're not necessarily great movies. In other words, Sinbad the Eye of the Tiger has a ton of stop motion animation.
Okay.
And it's really, if you go back and look through all of his films, his creatures were always like set pieces, and they came in and they left kind of deal. Maybe First Men in the Moon, just remembering that I'm kind of wrong about this, because First Men in the Moon had this, but really in Sinbad the Eye of the Tiger, he really brought in creatures as characters.
Right.
With the baboon and with Trog, they were like characters in the movie, which were more in part of the plot and part of the story, not just here's a monster, we're going to fight it and then it's going to be gone.
Right.
They were part of the story. This, the baboon for the whole movie, and so there's a ton of animation. But some of the acting, like the villain, Margaret Whiting, is a ham, and Patrick Wayne is kind of Woody. So it was kind of, and there's some long stretches of the movie where there's not a lot going on when they're in the valley with Melanthius and all that. So, but it was fun watching it for a crowd. It was fun seeing those set pieces once again that I love, and that was a good time. And then the next thing up was Patrick Wayne and his presentation. 82 years old, and he's still handsome as could be, and just another really nice guy. I was surprised at how nice he was with the crowd and his stories, and he's very sharp for his age, and just had a good talk. And I told Steve Turek later on, I said, after I met Patrick Wayne and saw his panel, I used to think of him as the worst Sinbad, but now I think of him as the third best Sinbad. And I was looking around, make sure he wasn't there to hear my comment, my backhanded compliment there.
Wow, Kenny. Wow.
But yeah, he did impress me, and later on during the bash, he was seated right next to Caroline Monroe, and I went and I got her a picture, and then I went and got a picture with him as well. And I got a picture, and I told him, I have to get a picture of you and with Jane Seymour and have you sign that, because if I tell my wife, my daughter, that I met Patrick Wayne, they're going to go, "Who's that?" And I'll say, "That's the son of John Wayne." And then they'll say, "Who's that?" And then I'll have to say, "Well, you know what? He kissed Dr. Quinn." No, they'll be excited about that. So I got a picture of him with Jane Seymour, and he signed that for me. I got a nice picture of him with me, and I had a little chat with him. I just seen one of his movies, one of his Westerns, as part of my 3-star movie trek I'm on. I saw Comancheros, which was directed by Michael Curtiz, the director of Casablanca. It was his last film.
Okay.
And it starred John Wayne and Patrick Wayne.
Huh.
So I had a little chat with him, and that's when I was like, I'm usually kind of shy with the stars. I feel like they don't want to be bothered with me and stuff, but I just kind of let that go and just kind of chatted with him, and he was very kind to me. And that's why he's now my third best Sinbad instead of the worst Sinbad. All right, so. Okay, the next thing up was the cake, which... I'm glad they kept some of the... even though they changed location, it sounds like they kept a lot of the traditions, so that's good to know. Yeah, and it was, and they did it very fast, because I went upstairs to get something, and I came back down, and it took me about 5 minutes, and the cake was basically gone. But
wow.
I was able to get a slice, and it was excellent as usual. And then another one of the things that I like, is kind of a newer tradition, is the live game show. And they had one the night before, but it was going to be like at 2:00 in the morning.
Oof.
By the time they got to it, and I was just not going to make it.
No. And
I wish I had. I love these game shows. This one was the Monster Mash match game, and I'm hoping what I'm seeing with this is like the future of the Monster Bash, because it's run by this guy Tom Shibula, who was the guy who presented the Mexican Monster movie, younger guy, and then another guy who's he's very popular at the Bash. His name's Leonard Hayhurst, and they put on a really good show, and a lot of energy, a lot of fun, and as Ron and the other Bashers get up in age, I can see those guys carrying on the torch, and it would continue to be fun and great, the Bash. Now this monster match game, they had the music from the original 70s show, and they had a panel, and the panel was the horror host Count Dracula and Karina, Mr. Lobo, and here we go for the third time, Caroline Monroe and Tom Shibula.
Okay.
And Leonard Hayhurst was the host, and then they pulled up two people from the audience, and they basically ran it just like the 70s TV show. If you're familiar with it all, they give, a funny comment, and then there's a blank, and they fill in the blank. And it was very funny. They had some of the answers were obvious, but some of the fans they brought up didn't know what being a Monster Kid was about. And then, Caroline, she was throwing out all this British stuff, that was like, what does that even mean? Because it was like these English words. But it was a lot of fun. And Mr. Lobo is a hoot.
He's great.
And Count Dracula. I had never seen him do host a show or anything, but he was fun. And it was a really good time. And I was there. I always want to get up on front. I don't have a problem. I have a problem talking one-on-one, but in a crowd, no problem. Get me up there. But they didn't pick me, but I enjoyed having fun.
Their loss.
Yeah. I enjoyed the show. It was very, very fun and good. And that reminds me, one of the things that didn't happen, which was kind of a disappointment for me, because one of my all-time favorite things, again, from the very first bash, they've had this tradition, and that's the Tom Weaver quiz show. And Tom Weaver could not make it, so they didn't do the quiz show. Oh. And I was kind of bummed about that, because I've always managed to get on the stage for that, and I've always been able to make a fool out of myself or get 1 point from winning. But I love doing that quiz show, and we weren't able to do that because Tom didn't come.
That's too bad.
And I was thinking, if you had told me, I could have done it.
Right.
I'd love to be a game show host. Okay, so the next thing up was the drive-in theater, which they did not do outside. They had some problems with electricity, and so they did it inside. It was Terror from Beyond Space.
Ooh,
and
nice.
It was kind of fun to watch with a crowd. And then the big midnight event. So, of course, that includes giving out rewards. And Mr. Colton, I can't remember his first name.
David Colton.
David Colton from the Rondo Awards was there. And he gave a Rondo Award to the artist Mark Maddox, who had a booth there and whose art is just fantastic. And well-deserved prize, Best Artist of the Year. Mm-hmm. They gave an award for Mr. Lobo as the best horror host. Or was it? I don't know. Maybe it was something else, but he won an award.
Favorite horror host, I think. No, he was Hall of Fame. He went in the Hall of Fame.
Oh yeah. He got in the Hall of Fame, and he gave a really nice speech. It was kind of,
which means he has his award, and I still don't have my plaque. David
really
Colton,
nice.
Do you hear me?
I mean, he hasn't sent it to you yet. It's really nice looking.
No, he hasn't sent it to me yet. So.
Oh my goodness, I thought you'd have it by now.
Yeah.
Well, anyways.
Nope, not jealous or bitter at all. Nope.
But that was neat. And then and also Frank Dell'Istrito, he won for the best book of the year.
Good.
With the Mummy book. So so that was neat. And they all had nice little speeches. And then the Foray Award was given to the Tom Shabula, who I was mentioned earlier.
Oh, that's
and
cool.
He's also wrote a book, and I picked up that book. It's about the 1966-67 TV season when everything was in color, and when Batman and I Dream of Jeannie and Star Trek and all these shows that we loved and have been syndication forever came out. And it looks like a really interesting book, and so I picked that up from Mr. Shabula, who won the only Foray Award this year. And of course, they did another one of my favorite traditions, the song on the new wine with Bob Pellegrino, and I love bellowing out the la 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 la. And then we had fun with that, and then the prize toss. I did not get anything really cool. Got a couple little toys that I left for kids that were there. So, but it was fun being there, and I didn't get hit, so I was not in danger. All right, so that was Saturday night. Sunday, I went to the Monster Bash Mass. The priest that does that is a super Bela Lugosi and Conrad Brooks fan. He has every Conrad Brooks movie on DVD.
Oh wow!
And always inspiring, Father Mike, and it was a good time too there. And after that, they showed nothing but several movies. There was no more panel discussions, no more real events. So I kind of just hung out, and I spent some time with the B movie casters. The groups that were kind of formed were podcasters. So we had Christopher Page, and then we had Scott and Tracy, and then Nick Brown from the B movie cast, and Steve Turek. Once in a while I saw him around there. So I spent some time just talking with them. I spent some time talking with our friend Steve Turek. But I really felt like we were missing both you and Mary Rotolo, because you guys kind of get us organized. There was no one was playing. I was like, and I was thinking to myself, why doesn't someone start a game of the Classic Five? And this little voice in my head says, well, you could have done it. Thanks, But it's like we were lacking that leadership and then Mary always puts the party together. We're gonna all go out to eat and invites everybody. But it was kind of, and Nick Brown was running a table, so he was at the table a lot. But I spent some time. Of course, I went through the dealer's room several times. The thing about this new site is the dealer's room. Apparently, they have the same amount of people, but the same amount of tables. But it's really compacted, the space. You just walk in and you feel like this is a lot smaller than the other one. But Nick said it's the same amount of tables. We're just closer together.
Huh.
And there were some people missing, like our friend Juan Ortiz. He sent his stuff, but then he fell down ill and his family, and so he could not come. So he sent a friend of his that's always at his table with him. He came and was helping Juan by selling his stuff. And there were some other people that I felt, I always miss this person. I miss that person. There was one guy who has tons and tons of magazines and FMs and stuff. And he's also plays on the Monster Bash band, but he didn't come. But there were some other newer people and things. And I didn't buy too much stuff in the dealer room. I kind of did everything right at the beginning and got really what I really wanted. But I had some stuff that's like, oh, I want this. And what they had, one of the thing I most wanted was there's a Gwanji that's made by Star Ace Toys, and they're being promoted by the Ray Harryhausen Foundation, and that thing was beautiful. $250. I was like, not yet. But then I thought later on, I told my wife and daughter, I said, all the money I spent to get there and do this, I could have bought 3 or 4 of them things, But,
yeah.
Because everything's, the food and everything was more expensive. The hotel's nice, very, very nice. And but its location is really nice. And if you like to walk, they have some beautiful trails that kind of go through the woods and past some like Westinghouse office buildings and stuff. But it's really a nice place. But it's kind of hard to get to any other kind of restaurants walking.
Okay.
You kind of have to drive or walk quite a distance to get to like a Cracker Barrel and a little set of restaurants that there were. But I ate some at the restaurant at the hotel, but it was really expensive, so don't want to complain too. But that was my Bash experience. And another highlight of the there was kind of a bittersweet highlight right near where the guest room was. They had set up a table, and it was in honor of a Monster Basher named Malcolm Giddens. Now, Malcolm Giddens is a fan artist, and he's won a Rondo for fan artists, I think a number, maybe 2 or 3 times. Mm-hmm. And he had a Foria Award as well. Very faithful Monster Basher. On my first Monster Bash that I went for the full time, 2010, he had put out a word that he wanted a roommate to help defray the cost of the hotel room. And I jumped on that. And I didn't know the guy, Adam. I said, I'll do that. And so I roomed with him my first Monster Bash, and we became friends. And every Monster Bash he was there. Well, he passed away this past year. But his daughter came, and she looks just like him, the facial expressions, the eyes and everything. And she had set up some of his paintings and some of his memorabilia and stuff. And I was able to talk with her, and we shed some tears together because I missed Malcolm. I miss Bob and Malcolm, because they're not with us anymore. And I missed you. and there was just as many people missing as there were there, as far as people that I wanted to talk with. You know, a number of the B movie casters that I loved to talk with didn't come, and I had the only interesting thing with the Monster Kid Radio. You know, Steve Turek was there, and of course, Doug Cotton Tracy, and we talked a little bit about stuff. But there's one guy came up to me and he goes, "I recognize your voice." And I looked at his thing. I can't remember his name. He talked briefly. He left, and I don't know if he was just there for a day or what. And I didn't see him again. So I think he was just there for a short time, and I can't tell you who it was, but he recognized me from my segments, and he might be a Twitch guy. I don't know, but if you remember saying that to me, let me know who you are, so maybe we can get more time. Now, another thing I was hoping that would happen, and I knew that Mark Maskey had gone to the bash on occasion, and I was hoping he would have been there. I would have liked to chat with him as fellow segment producers, and we have something else in common that I think it would be fun to meet him and become friends with him. But he wasn't there either. So, but the people that were there and the things that happened, the traditions, made it worthwhile, and I had a good time at the bash. I left you speechless.
I'm jealous. I mean, I like everybody there, you know, and I miss it. And I didn't even think about the fact that Malcolm wasn't going to be there, because he was a pretty unassuming guy, but he was so hard to miss because his love for this stuff was so big. And wow, I didn't even think about that. Is so not. I'm kind of blown away that they had something set up for him. That's really sweet. It's really sweet.
Yep.
But I had Malcolm on the show briefly during a Monster Bash episode. He was actually the first guy that I had record for that bash. So he's on an episode of MKR at one point in the archives. You might be able to find him. But also, I just miss the whole thing. I'm at a point in my life right now where financially I'm not very well off. So I don't have the money to go to these big events unless they're like within a half-hour driving distance or something. So I'm grateful that you're willing to come on the show and kind of do a recap. And not just because I didn't know what I was going to run this week, but and you're like, well, I can do this. Like, yeah, let's do it. But be able to share some of that stuff. And, you know, between talking to you, Kevin Slick's photos, and of course the Monster Bash Facebook presence, Christopher Page, Scott and Tracy, Steve Turek, some other people that I'm sure I'm not remembering right now, posting all over Facebook and social media about what was going on. I get just a touch of it, just like a whiff of Monster Bash, even though I wasn't able to be there. So
yeah, I was fighting to, it's like, part of me wanted to just be sending you stuff. Oh, look. And that's, you know, every time I saw a Creature from the Black Lagoon thing, here, look at this. And I was like, I don't know if he'll like this or not. He'll be like, I want that, I can't have it. I want that, I can't have it.
No, I would have loved it. I would have loved it.
So I was like, no. And there's so much Creature from the Black Lagoon stuff, man. There's so many different models and everything.
You know,
It's so popular.
Right. I mean, can you blame? I mean, it's like the best movie ever. So, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, some even say it's better than Godzilla, Steve Turek.
Well, I'm going to give you a hint. You're going to be getting something in the mail. Okay.
Oh, no.
So
dude.
I was thinking of you. It's proof that I was thinking of you. All right. So, you have something in common. This is your hint. You have something in common with one of the Addams family. And she shows her love with some artwork, and some of that's coming your way. So, just so you know.
Okay.
And my birthday and Father's Day just went by, and my family got me some gifts, and they didn't know I already had one of the things. So I took the new one they got me, and I'm sending that to you too. A hint. It's got a cat. It's got a cat and a famous icon holding a cat.
Okay.
So you'll love it. And so that's coming your way, and it should be there I sent it today, so it should be there in about 4 days.
Well, I will let listeners know as soon as it arrives. So,
yeah, but that was my bash experience, and I'm in debate, with the cost of it and everything, whether I will try to go again. I think it's going to all depend on the guests and I know who's going and who's not going. This year, it was almost like, why am I doing this? At times, I thought that before going, because when you weren't going, and then just hearing that so many people weren't going to go, and I've seen Caroline Munro many times, and I've met Patrick Wayne briefly before, but didn't really have a chance to talk with him or anything, and it just wasn't. But it was kind of like they really made it a Harryhausen theme Monster Bash. The picture that they had on it, and it's like. And every year it seems like he does that to me. It seems like Ron is like, we got to get Kenny to come to this thing. Well, let's choose this guest, So I'm trying to get him to get Nancy Kovac. And I met Nancy Kovac at Star Trek Las Vegas 2 years ago now. And another sweetheart, Harryhausen princess from Jason the Argonauts and Star Trek she was on, and she played with Vincent Price. And Diary for a Madman, I think that was the one she was in.
It was.
And she's going to be, and I talked with her about coming to the bash when I met her, but her agent was like, oh, that's a little town thing. We're not going to go to that. And he was really a snobby guy. But here she's going to go to the Mid-Atlantic Convention, Mid-Atlantic Nostalgia Convention, which is similar to the Monster Bash from all I've heard about it.
Sure. Same.
And I'd like, hey, and Ron will be there. So I was kind of, Ron's so busy. It's like you feel like you're disturbing him if you talk with him. But I was like, hey, look, Nancy Kovac's going to be here. Maybe you can talk to her. He's like, oh, I'll try. We'll see what happens. And I've told Steve Turek too, and he's willing to talk to anybody. So
true.
Hopefully now. So if they bring Nancy Kovac to the bash, even though I've met her and had a nice talk with her. Actually at the Star Trek convention, because no one was really going to see her. But I could not go for another Harryhausen princess. So that might be the thing that tries me to go, but it depends. But I do love it and do enjoy it. It's, the prices and stuff is a little bit pricey, but I would recommend it, especially listeners that if you live anywhere near Pittsburgh, if you're driving distance, there is no reason for you not to go. And they're going to have one in October, which promises to be an interesting one. They're going to have the grandson of Lon Chaney, who's really kept up the tradition of his great-grandfather and grandfather. And he's coming. Then they're going to have the family of Shemp Howard from the Three Stooges.
Oh, wow.
And they're going to have Johnny Whitaker from Family Affair, Sigmund and the Sea Monster. He was in some Dracula TV movie as well that they were promoting. And then if you're fans of Second City TV, Count Floyd, he was my second horror host, Count Floyd from Second City TV, the Vampire Monkeys of West Mifflin, Pennsylvania. And he did several, they did these ridiculous, he captured Chili Billy from Pittsburgh and just made fun in a tongue-in-cheek way. And he's going to be there if you're into, and it's going to be like a comedy, monster comedy themed bash in October. And it's going to be at the same hotel. And if you're anywhere close or you want to go to a bash, I would highly recommend it. And then if I decide to go in next June, well, maybe we'll see you there and meet you there. And I was really wanting to do something like just kind of chickened out and not having, but it's like next year I was like, I'm so frustrated with myself. It's like next year if I go, I'm going to be more proactive and getting people involved. And I want to interview people and see how famous monsters influence their life to make segments on that.
Yeah.
And there was a couple people that I was thinking, if there's a girl that comes and used to do things there named Deborah Painter, and she actually had letters in Famous Monsters. I've seen her name in Famous Monsters, and so it's like she'd be a good one. And then the guy who sells Famous Monsters, but he wasn't there, she wasn't there, and so I was kind of like, it's kind of my shyness kind of overcame me, but that's why I hope we can get you to come, but we'll see what happens.
Well, listeners, that's a good pitch. I think you would have a really good time if you went to Monster Bash, and you'd run into people like Kenny and all the others, all the other Monster Kid radio heads, Monster Kid regulars, whatever you want to call them. You know, they're always up for meeting each other and playing a round of the Classic 5. Kenny.
Hey, let's do it.
Yeah.
It's late. Let's do it.
You didn't get a chance to do it at the Bash. I've got the Bash specific deck. I've got the questions up here on my screen.
Perfect.
You ready to play a round of the Classic 5?
Sure am.
For listeners who don't know, the Classic 5 is a game that we play on Monster Kid Radio and sometimes in person at Monster Bash, where I have a deck of cards. Each one of these cards has a this or that. Which movie do you prefer style question on them. There are no wrong answers. It's just a way to get Monster Kids talking about their favorite topic, monster movies. Kenny, let's play a round of the Classic 5.
Let's do it.
All right, this comes from the Monster Bash exclusive deck, which you can only get if I ever do make it to a Monster Bash and I'm selling them at the table. All right, Vincent Price or Boris Karloff?
Vincent Price, wow. That used to be easy for me with Boris Karloff coming up on top.
Yeah?
But I've really grown to love Vincent Price. And I think one of the aspects of that is reading Victoria Price's biography about him, and knowing the fullness of his life and how he was involved with art and cooking and just was a genuinely great person, not just a movie star. And I know that Karloff has the same reputation as a person, and an animal lover and just a gentleman in all ways. And it's the movies go back and forth, but really like the films Dr. Phibes, Theater of Blood, his Poe films for Vincent Price. Right now, and again, depends on what day you ask me, depends what movie I watched last. But right now, I think that Vincent Price would take the cake for me if I was to go to a Monster Bash and they were at the same age and I had the choice, I had to choose between one or the other. I think right now I'd rather sit and talk with Vincent Price. I love them both, but I would have, if I had to make that choice today, it would be Vincent Price. Now, if I see a good Boris Karloff movie, or read it, or maybe I need to watch the play again on Karloff or something, maybe I would change. But right now, today, it's Vincent Price. How about you?
There are no wrong answers, of course. I think for the same reasons, I've got a connection to Vincent Price for his daughter. Victoria's amazing. I call her a friend, and I think, yeah. I mean, no slight on Karloff. I love Karloff, but yeah, Vincent Price is just, he was special. He was an amazing person, and yeah. So that's where I'd go to.
Another thing that really pushes me to Vincent Price almost on 100% level is his connection to noir.
Yes.
I'm a huge noir fan, and he was in various film noir films. And now another thing, I just popped in my head. I just watched a Vincent Price movie. The most unconventional Vincent Price is in this movie. It was a World War II movie called The Eve of St. Mark.
Okay.
And in Leonard Maltin's review, he says, it's one of his best roles. So I was really excited to see this. And it was basically a, young guy at home, gets drafted in the army, he gets in the army, and there, one of the soldiers with this guy is Vincent Price. and he plays like a Southern gentleman who's quoting poetry. He's being Vincent Price. He's being Dr. Fives. He's being the guy in Theater of Blood because he's just like quoting and spouting poetry in the middle of the war. And he starts out shaven, but they're stuck in, they're an artillery group, so they have, their big cannon, their howitzer, and they're taking care of that, but they get stuck and they're trapped. And so they all start growing beards. And so by the end of the movie, he looks like Vincent Price, with his beard and mustache. And it was a great performance in a movie that you just wouldn't think, this is a Vincent Price movie. It was a propagandistic war movie, and he was fantastic in it. And I just watched that 2 or 3 days ago. And so those are extra points for him, and especially the fact that was in some very key noirs like Lauer, and fantastic in those as well. So Vincent Price is my man.
Right on. All right, card number 2. What has been your favorite Monster Bash purchase, not including a deck of the Classic 5?
Well, honestly, I've never forked out for a deck of Classic 5 because I don't have anyone to play with.
Oh no!
I don't know any Monster Kids except you and the guys that already have their decks. Anyways, let me think. My favorite Monster Bash purchase. I'll give you a nice gap so you can edit my thinking out. Oh my goodness. What was my favorite Monster Bash purchase? Wow, that's tough. You know what I got at Monster Bash? Well, I got because of Monster Bash. I'm going to say this. I didn't actually purchase it at Monster Bash, and I can't really remember a specific thing that I bought that I'm like, I bought this at Monster Bash, and I'm glad I did type of thing. Most of the things I've bought there have been movies that I've watched, and then that was good. I'm glad I saw that. Now I'm ready to give it away to somebody. I haven't found a lot of keepers. But one film I bought because of Monster Bash and has become a favorite of mine, and I've grown to love it because I was forced myself to watch it probably 100 times, and that is Santo versus the Martian Invasion.
And I know that's a particular favorite of yours, man.
Yeah, and that was the first film that I sat with you on a Monster Kid Radio and talked about, and that was not during Lucha de Mayo. That was somewhere in the middle of year before you even started Lucha de Mayo. But the thing is with that movie, I was in the Monster Bash. I did something, my little story. I decided and I don't know where I got this idea and why I decided to do this. I can't remember why I decided to do this. My first bash, and I knew they were doing these Mexican monster movies, and I told Ron Adams, who I barely knew just through the internet, I said, I could come on and like pretend that I'm a wrestler and speak in Spanish because I'm fluent in Spanish, living in Mexico, and just do something fun.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, sure, that's fine. So and that was the end of that. And so I bought a mask, and I was looking to get a whole uniform, but it was really hard to find, and what I found, like, boots were really expensive. So I said, well, I'll be a cheesy wrestler, and I made a special shirt with the Santo on it, and he was holding the head of Gort because it was a alien invasion special Monster Bash, and I got up on the stage during the introduction of the Mexican monster movie, and I just started ranting in Spanish. And I think Juan was there, and he was like translating for me, and it was like everyone was surprised. I told Ron I was going to do it, but I didn't tell him, is it okay? Am I still okay? I'm going to do this. I went into the bathroom, put on all this stuff, and just jumped on the stage and just started ranting in Spanish and complaining about how the aliens, space aliens, they're not going to be able to, the American heroes cannot defeat the space aliens like my dad, Santo. And I was Santa Tito, which means teensy weensy Santo. The 13th son of Santo, says my mother, but he denies it, but my mother says that I am the son of Santo, the 13th one. So anyways, and I just made a whole thing about it. Then I did the next year, it was the Vampire Dracula one, and I did a PowerPoint, and I was like really telling the people in Spanish, and Juan was translating for me, how the people, the vampire hunters in England and the United States are terrible. And, and there's only, the best vampire hunter is Santo. And I had like a PowerPoint and I was showing, the wimpy Edward Van Sloan and the skinny as a rail Peter Cushing. I was like, these are your vampire hunters? Look at this. And then at the end I says, and now America has a major problem. And I put up a picture of Edward or whatever the guy's name is, the Twilight movies.
Oh,
I
no.
said, who's going to deal with these guys? And the last picture is Santo, and he's like holding his hand out, and he has Edward's head. It's like he's ripped out his head, and the spine all together, and there's little black X's where the eyes are at, and it's and this is the king of vampires. And then the next year, I made a stinking movie. Now you've seen that.
Yeah.
Santo contra the bisnieto de Guanji, the Santo versus the great grandson of Guanji. And I combined Santo with Guanji.
Yeah.
And I don't even know how I even had time to do that. There was like special effects extravaganza using After Effects and a computer. And I put this thing together. It had a blast. And then that was all in Butler, Pennsylvania. They moved to Mars, Pennsylvania. So the next one was Monster Bash is in Mars.
Yep.
I said, I gotta find a Santo movie in Mars or something.
There you go. Yeah.
I found this movie and I said, Ron, can this be our movie? He said, yes. Well, I'm going to dub it for you. And I did a special Monster Bash dub. I did all the sound myself. I did most of the voices. I had Ron and his wife and daughter do some of the voices, but I did all the voices. I was changing and modulating it electronically and changing my voice, and I had a blast. But I had to watch that stinking movie like 50, 60, 100 times. I don't know how many times. And it was a blast. I don't want to go through all the details, but it was just fun figuring out ways to make it. And I think it came out pretty good. I enjoy watching it myself, my own dub. And it's funny. I didn't just do a straight up dub. I changed all the names to be Monster Bashers.
Yep.
And I put in little jokes here and there where they were appropriate. Like there's this sound that they use every time they would beam in and out. It was like, wah, 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 wah. But then they would forget to use it at times. And it's like, why did they stop using it? So I put them back in every place, And then if a guy was looking at one of the Martian girls, I would throw that in. So it was like Wayne's World, when they go swing, so it was like,
Yep.
wow, wow, wow. So, and I just was having fun with the thing. And so I purchased that movie from Juan, not at the bash, but before the bash, but because of the bash.
Gotcha.
I know that was a long answer to a simple question.
And
but
that's what this is about, though,
That's my connection to the bash. And I kind of lost it when 2014. I had a major life issue, or I was released from the job I was in, and things. I had a really crazy year, 2014. And I kind of got away from being involved with the bash, and hopefully someday I can get more involved again. But thanks to you, I can be bashing all year long.
Aww.
Thanks to you, I can be with Monster Kid Radio. It's like the mini bash every single week, and I can participate with my FM segments every week. Thanks to you, and I appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate that. I know we're completely off topic, but when I won the 4E and I was like, I don't know what to say, you hopped up on stage and you grabbed the mic and you started telling people about Monster Kid Radio. I was like, that was awesome. So thank you.
That's one thing I've learned. It's hard to talk about yourself or raise support for yourself or anything. Mm-hmm. But when a friend needs help or when a friend needs praise, it's easy to do, and it was my pleasure to get up there and tell people, why aren't you listening to Monster Kid Radio? If you love Monster Bash, you got to be listening to Monster Kid Radio.
All right, question number 3. Favorite classic 3D movie?
Favorite classic 3D movie?
You know what mine is. I mean...
yeah, Creature from the Black Lagoon. Creature of the Black Lake, something like that.
Yeah, the monster from the Dark Lake or something.
Favorite 3D movie. I've not seen that many in 3D. I think I did watch that once with the red-blue glasses, The Creature from the Black Lagoon. But yeah, I would say off the top of my head of the 3D classic 3D movies, I would have to say that Creature would be the favorite. I've had a couple of viewings of It Came from Outer Space lately.
Oh yeah.
And I would hopefully, if you could get me away from Mexico, I would like to do that sometime with you and have the great Who's Better, Julia Adams or Barbara Rush.
Oh,
because
that
I'm in
sounds
love
like a
with
challenge.
I'm in love with Barbara Rush.
All right.
So of the Universal 50s girls, who's better? But anyways, but I like that movie, but Creature, I think it would be better in 3D. I think I saw House of Wax in 3D once.
Ooh,
I remember seeing
yeah.
the paddleball scene.
So
3D.
silly, but I love it.
Yeah, but to me that movie isn't that good as a movie. But in Creature from the Black Lagoon, I really like. I like It Came from Outer Space, but I think the 3D isn't as prominent. So if it's like 3D, clawed hands coming out at you, then the Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Sure. Okay. All right. Let's see. Favorite classic monster movie you'd show as part of a double feature with King Kong.
King Kong. Double feature King Kong. That they do this all the time, but it's a triple feature. But I would skip Son of Kong and go with Mighty Joe Young.
Yeah.
Okay. The reason I think if you love King Kong, then the Mighty Joe Young is kind of is very similar in story and everything, but you also get a sense at the advancements that they make. Now, King Kong is fabulous, and it's painted backgrounds and the glass paintings and all that. Perhaps it was made it very expensive to do in 1949 when they made Mighty Joe Young. But Mighty Joe Young, the animation and the amount of animation in Mighty Joe Young is tremendous. I mean, there's a ton of animation in that movie, and I just think it's like seeing the giant ape, and then seeing Mighty Joe Young and his involvement with the people around him. I mentioned the creatures as characters, and I forgot about Mighty Joe Young totally, but that is a character. He is a character in that movie, and it was fabulously animated by Ray Harryhausen and Willis O'Brien and Pete Peterson, but mainly Ray Harryhausen.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that would be a good double feature. Maybe it might be too much ape for people, but if you love King Kong, you'll love Mighty Joe Young too.
Too much ape.
Can you have too much ape? Can you watch 24 hours of wrestling movies? Can you watch 24 hours of... Can you watch the 3 Creature of the movies in a row?
Yeah.
Would you watch them in reverse order so you get the best, save the best for last?
Oh, I haven't really thought about doing that. Interesting. Huh. Yeah, we were talking before we started recording about how everything's prequels these days, so I wonder how that would play, it's a prequel and then the prequel to prequel. Yeah. Interesting. All right. Let's see here. Well, speaking of apes, what's your favorite man in ape or man in gorilla suit movie?
Man in ape. Does that include Planet?
It can.
All right, then that's it.
Planet of the Apes. Yeah.
The first thing that comes to the mind is like, Gorilla at Large, or Raymond Burr, or Murders in the Rue Morgue. But, if you're really talking, and okay, so they're wearing outfits, but Julius, the jailkeeper, that's a full-on gorilla suit. He just has a little, like a tunic on, a little sleeveless tunic. So that's a gorilla suit. So yeah, Planet of the Apes is so fabulous. I was in the 70s. There was a time like when Planet of the Apes was big. Battle of the Planet of the Apes came out, and then it was so big that they made a show. And I was at the perfect age, 9, 10, 11 years old, to be a Planet of the Apes fan. And that lasted about a year. I had like different fandoms. I was always monsters, but then, Planet of the Apes came in, Star Trek, and then Star Wars. And that, but there was a time where it was like Planet of the Apes, and the original Planet of the Apes is just, I just love that movie. Again, music,
it's fantastic.
And the scene where the hunt scene, or when he escapes from the jail, the music and the action, it's so well directed, and it's fabulous. And then the moving ending, and not just the very, very ending, but the speech that Dr. Zaius gives to him, at the end, you won't like what you find, and it's just all that section at the end is just fabulous. The whole thing. I love that movie.
I agree with you. It's fantastic. It's one that I'd like to show Beth, but I know that she's seen the more recent Planet of the Apes, and I don't know. It's something I feel like I need to work up to with her, because I'd love to share those with her because I love them so much. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. I bring that up, listeners, because Kenny and I were talking before this recording about what movie I'm going to show Beth next, and so taking suggestions and advice from folks. There's a new telephone number, by the way. Stay tuned for that, because I got to let people know about what happened with the phone number and all that for Monster Kid Radio. So anyway, that's a totally different topic. Was that question number 4 or 5?
See, we did Vincent Price, Boris Karloff thing that I bought, King Kong, Apes.
Well, that was 5, but tell me we'll do one more just for fun. What 2 classic science fiction movies would make the perfect double feature?
Science fiction, did you say?
Yep, 2 classic sci-fi movies, which would make the perfect double feature.
Well, I'm going to say the word blessed to be around and 12, 13 years old in 1978, 14 years old, 1978, after Star Wars came out, and that was the big thing. MGM released all of those George Pal classics, along with Forbidden Planet, The Time Machine. Time Machine's George Pal, but War of the Worlds, George Pal. There was another one that wasn't George Pal, but Forbidden Planet was in the mix. And of all those, seeing those on the big screen and just beautiful prints, I'm going to say, for me, science fiction wise, Forbidden Planet and War of the Worlds.
Ooh, that's good.
Those are just so, the colors, the music, the action, the special effects. Those 2 are of those classics they had, because they would have Time Machine and When Worlds Collide, and those 2. There was 2 others that were out around that time. I can't remember, but those were the fabulous ways to see those in the movie theaters. Eugene, Oregon, with my buddies, my Monster Kid buddies, and nothing like seeing them on the big screen when you're watching them normally on TV with commercials and all that.
Yeah,
it couldn't be beat. And those 2, if I say to my daughter, if I'd say, hey, I want you to experience something I experienced when I was a kid, come see these 2 movies in the movie theater with me, those are the 2 I'd choose: Forbidden Planet and War of the Worlds.
That sounds amazing. Well, with that, we'll put away the classic 5. We'll wrap up this recording. And once again, thanks, Kenny, for doing this and spending some time with us here, talking about the Monster Bash and sharing his experiences here. Like I said, I'm lucky that I've got so many friends that are willing to share their experiences, and just lucky I've got so many friends, period, that are into this kind of stuff. And Monster Bash is where you're going to make those friends. If you haven't been there, highly recommend you get there, because you will not be disappointed.
See if you can find a promo. I think he has a promo out there for the the October Bash.
Yeah,
Free
if
advertising.
he does. Yeah. No, if he does, you know.
Classic monster movie fans from across the nation have their sights set on Monster Bash this October 14th, 15th, and 16th, 2022. It's the gathering of fans and professionals from every state for the event of a lifetime. It's a celebration of horror and science fiction films with a special spotlight on the greatest horror comedies of all time, like Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. Hold on to your hats. Look at this guest of honor lineup. Ron Chaney, grandson of Lon Chaney. The Three Stooges Shemp Howard family. SCTV's Count Floyd, Joe Flaherty. From Family Affair and The Mystery in Dracula's Castle, Johnny Whitaker. From The Andy Griffith Show and The Little Shop of Horrors, Jackie Joseph. The original co-writer and zombie from Night of the Living Dead, John Russo. Zombie Walker Jeremy Ambler from AMC's hit TV show, The Walking Dead. Monster Muppeteer Emmy Award-winning Bill Diamond. TV horror host Son of Ghoul, Drac and Countess Carita, and more. Meet and chat with all the guests. Enjoy an almost non-stop film festival, life-size monsters, and shop over 100 vendor tables of the rarest monster movie collectibles, monster magazines, DVDs, Blu-rays, t-shirts, and everything classic monsters. Quick, get on board with monster movie fans from across the nation at Monster Bash, October 14th through the 16th, 2022, at the Marriott Pittsburgh North. Autumn's creepy classic festival of stars, vendors, and fans just like you. Get all the details right now at monsterbash.us. That's monsterbash.us. Or call 724-238-4317.
Discover Planet of the Apes. A civilization where humans run wild in the jungles, and the superior beings are apes.
Tribunal has placed you in my custody for final disposition. Do you realize what that means? No. Emasculation to begin with. Then experimental surgery on the speech centers, on the brain. And a kind of living death.
Well, that brings us to the end of this episode of Monster Kid Radio. Big thanks to Kenny and Mark for being part of this week's show. I love having segments for the show. I know we didn't get Kenny's look at famous monsters of Filmland, but whenever he sends that in, that's an important part of the show as far as I'm concerned. The Beta Capsule Review, that's awesome as well. And, you know, we've had other segments in the past as well, other contributors, Jerry Green and Dr. Tong. Just whenever we have a new segment added to the mix, it just makes the show that much more rich. So, if you're a producer of any kind, a content producer, or want to contribute something to Monster Kid Radio, well, drop me an email at monsterkidradio@gmail.com. I'd love to throw you into the mix and help make Monster Kid Radio better by including your voice and your content with this show, because this show really is about the Monster Kid community. As much as I love what I do, and I love kind of steering conversations and getting guests on and doing interviews and things like that, my favorite part of this is the community that is built up around this. It's my favorite part of Monster Bash. And, you know, the guests sound awesome. I still haven't met Carolyn Monroe myself, and the Land of the Lost thing, talking to Kenny made me realize how much I really would have liked to have met those people. I was a little down on it, to be honest with you, when I first heard about it, because I'd met her before at a Comic-Con many, many moons ago, and it was like, okay, whatever. But hearing Kenny recount his experience about interacting with the two of them and getting in the raft and doing all that, I even went on YouTube to see if I could find like a commercial for Land of the Lost so I could play the audio here on this episode of the show. I couldn't find anything, but I watched so many clips of just like the intro to the song. And just hearing the banjo, just hearing that just gets me thinking, man, I did love that show when I was a kid. And it would have been awesome to get in the raft with everybody and just do the photo. Oh, how cool would that have been, man? But as much as I missed that, what I really missed is just seeing my friends, seeing the community that's built up around it. And my favorite part of Monster Bash, or any convention that I go to where Monster Kid Radio is kind of a thing, is when I get to meet people that I've never interacted with before. Because I just get to add you to my mental Rolodex of friends. Because, you know, we're all friends here. So anyway, if you get a chance to go to a Monster Bash or any monster convention, any convention really, let your freak flag fly and meet some new friends, build that community, and just see what happens. I'll tell you what happened for me. I built a podcast. Take that back. I helped build a podcast with you. So thank you for listening and thank you for being part of the show. If you have any feedback for the show, monsterkidradio@gmail.com is the way to do it. You can send me an email. We'll have the Monsters in the Machine read it aloud on the show, or you can call and leave a voicemail, 360-524-2484. What's coming up next week on the show? Well, I already kind of alluded to it. I've had some audio sent to me from the Bash, courtesy of listener Mike R., and I haven't had a chance to listen to it yet, but I'm going to go through and hopefully, fingers and tentacles crossed, you're going to hear Carolyn Monroe at Monster Bash next week here on the show. You can find out everything you need to know about Monster Kid Radio over on our website at monsterkidradio.net, where we got links to our Facebook page, Facebook group, Twitter, Discord, Reddit, Patreon. It's all there. Even if we don't get a lot of activity going on places like Reddit or Discord, it's there for you. And I would love to see these options, these places online to kind of build and become just places for monster kids to hang out and chat it up about monster movies, you know? So yeah, follow those links, as well as any link that you find over there as well that goes to Amazon. Amazon and I, we have a relationship. Okay, not really. I'm an Amazon affiliate, which means if you buy anything from Amazon following any of those links, and it doesn't have to be for the item in question, there is a generic Amazon link of just like the Frankenstein monster silhouette. Just click on that. That'll take you to Amazon. Follow that link whenever you're shopping online. And what happens is that everything that you buy from Amazon after following that link, as long as you stay within that browser, that umbrella, so to speak, we get like 2%, 3%. I don't know what the exact cutoff is, but we get a little bit of the money that would have normally gone to Jeff Bezos and company. So he's already been to space. It's not like he needs any more money or anything like that. What's he saving up for? I'll tell you what I'm saving up for: rent. So if you follow the Amazon affiliate link, you help us out here at Monster Kid Radio, and you help me out directly. So thank you so much. I appreciate you for doing that. But then, of course, I just appreciate you for listening and spreading the word. So thank you. All right, that's it. Let's go ahead and wrap up by reminding you that Monster Kid Radio is a registered service mark of Monster Kid Radio LLC for now. All original content of Monster Kid Radio by Monster Kid Radio LLC is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 3.0 unported license. Of course, that doesn't apply to the song One Night in 57. That belongs to Chris Yeworth and the Molten McQueens. They gave us permission, specifically Chris Yeworth gave me permission to play this song on Monster Kid Radio. You can pick up the album One Night in 57. It's a 13-track album, so there's more music than just One Night in 57. But One Night in 57, well, when you hear the lyrics, you'll know what it's all about and why we're playing it. My name is Sarah Kim Cook. I'll talk to everybody next week. Ciao.
In 1957, something came around. The molten meteor came crashing down. It changed forevermore the face of this sleepy old town. It brought horror, chills, and laughter all at the same time. And 50 years later, people still stand in line to run out of the theater being chased by that giant red slime. Well, it landed out in Chester Springs where no one was around. Slowly poked the stick at it, which part turned upside down. And it might have died out there because there was nothing around left to eat. We know it didn't like Pepsi. But Steve McQueen drove it into town at a breakneck pace. It ate Stephen Chase and the nurse at old Doc Struce's place. Pretty soon it threatened the entire human race. One night in 57 was all that it took to make its name famous in the cinema books. Jack, Ted, and Shorty, Steve, and neither Gene, Ralph, and Bert was Bill, Vince, and Tom, but only Eli got hurt. So if someone comes to town and says, "Does anything ever happen around here?" you can refer them to my favorite year. That night in 57 when the monster came to town. Come on, everybody, let's go look for it, all right?
Downingtown headquarters, this is Phoenixville. We have a report of some rowdy teenagers at the Colonial Theater acting up at the Midnight Smoke Show. There's probably nothing to it, but we're asking you to stand by while we go to check it out. In case these crazy kids get out of hand and we need backup. I don't know what these teens are thinking. We'll never get through the 50s at this rate. Over.
Well, before it left the continent, it sure got around. From Chester Springs to Phoenixville and Downingtown. It stopped at Jerry's Market and Rofo, where we all got a clue. But even though the grown-ups wouldn't listen to the teens, they finally got together and they all found the means to see the sunrise after the longest night in local history. One night in 57 was all that it took to make his name famous in the cinema books. Jack, Ted, and Shorty, Steve, and Nita, Gene, Ralph, and Bert was Bill, Vince, and Tom, but only Eli got hurt. So someone comes to town and asks, does anything ever happen around here? You can refer to my favorite year, that night in 57 when the monster came to town. Oh yeah, that night in 57 when the molten